Hi there, good noon, and it is absolutely amazing to meet you. Now that CAT is over, we are looking at the next set of exams. So, remember a day before yesterday in the evening, we worked on Snap. Then, yesterday at 12, we once again sat down and worked on Snap. And today, we sit down right here with each other and we'll be working on XAT. And tomorrow in the evening, once again, you and I will sit down together and we'll work on Snap. Although tomorrow the focus area will be grammar. Okay, so so that's how we've planned it. We are going ahead and working on one exam after another, ensuring that you are very thoroughly, very well prepared. So, welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe it and press the bell icon so that you get to know every single time when we go live. And my name is Vikrant. I am your personal coach for all things related to English and communication skills. And today, we plan to dive into critical reasoning, an area that I so emphasize on right from day one, that I think those of you who have been working with me, it will not even come as a surprise. I mean, you'd know, okay, Vikrant, critical reasoning. We'll go ahead and talk about it, yes. So, very good morning, Roma, Abhirami, good noon. तो रोमा मतलब जैसे भी मैं भी कई बार लेट उठता हूँ ना, तो इस टाइम पे मेरे को मॉर्निंग की फील आ रही होती है, so it's fine. So let us go ahead and dive into the topic for the day. But before that, here is something that I want to put in your mind, a thought which, if it remains, is going to make a dramatic difference in your life. I don't even know you. I don't know your journey. Even then, I can be absolutely confident when it comes to stating this. The only thing that stands between you and outrageous success is continuous progress. Can you show up every day and deliver your best? That's it. It is this everyday part which is absolutely important, absolutely crucial. And if anybody who can do that is bound to make it really big in his or her. So, now taking you over to that, what is critical reasoning? So by now you know reasoning, right? Reasoning is a special type of thinking in which we think over some facts in order to arrive at a conclusion. Or from the perspective of exams, you end up evaluating a lot of those conclusions, right? So within reasoning, you actually study areas like syllogism and logical consistency as well, where if you look at it, at least the textbook method, the academic method of these two areas is that they're artificial in nature. We give you some simpler cooked up arguments and you get to work on them, but then those simpler artificial areas ensure that you get to know reasoning intimately. You get a grip on reasoning, but the goal of teaching you reasoning, or testing you on reasoning from the examiner's perspective, is not so that you could perform well in syllogisms or logical consistencies. Their goal is to see how well you are going to perform in your everyday life. So the moment we start applying reasoning to all those arguments that are present in your everyday life, no cooked up things, no artificial things, but arguments that are from life or arguments that are inspired by situations from life. When you apply your ability of reasoning to those arguments, we say that now we are getting into the domain of critical reasoning. It is also occasionally called critical thinking. And when you combine it with something like RC, then you can also call it critical reading. And these areas are very important for your day-to-day life. These are also very important from the perspective of exams, especially XAT. And another exam, which is where it is important, is CAT, but that's behind us, so we'll not talk about it. Okay, so why are we talking about reasoning? Let me give you that answer through the paper pattern. So by now, in case you're not aware, XAT basically is divided into two parts. So you have part one and you have part. Fair enough. Now, part two is not a part that is evaluated for giving calls to individuals. So your percentile, your calls, all of those things depend on part one. Right? So this is the part that we are more concerned about. This part has 76 multiple choice questions divided into three sections. But the important thing is that there is no sectional time limit, which means that your question selection and consequently your recognition of what it is that you're good at, what it is that you're not that good at, these things become even more important for you. Okay, so 26 of these are verbal and logical ability questions. Here are some additional things that I want you to know about that. So what is new about this particular exam? So number one, the difficulty level. So the difficulty level could be higher as compared to a lot of other entrance exams, including the CAT. Although, going by the way CAT went this year, it is highly unlikely that XAT is going to be tougher. It will probably be at par. But then you never know. We should always stay ready for some surprises. It can be easier, it can be tougher. So we just deal with it when we see it. But then we should expect the difficulty level on average to be on the higher side. Then the other thing is duration. So instead of a 2 hour exam or SNAP, which is just 1 hour exam, here you are going to sit for a significantly longer while. Then there is a section that no other B school exam has, and that is decision making. You need to go ahead and prepare for that as well. Moreover, there is no sectional time limit. There are 5 options instead of 4 for every question. So that introduces a slight twist when it comes to the balance of probabilities. Moreover, here is the marking scheme: +1, -0.25, but there is no negative marking in the GK section, which is part of part 2. And then there is a penalty for leaving questions. So in exams like CAT, SNAP, etc., even if you don't attempt a question, it's okay. You just get a 0. But in Navneet, no, there is no sectional time limit in paper 2 either. So what I typically recommend is that you go through GK, which generally most of the people takes around 7 to 10 minutes. And that leaves you with a good 20 minutes for essays. And if you get a good 20 minutes for your essay, you can, or 20 to 23 minutes for essay, you can easily target writing around 250 words in that. So purely writing the 250 words, just the actual mechanical writing part will probably take you around 7-8 minutes, which means that you can devote the remaining 12 to 15 minutes to thinking and organizing the essay in your mind and on your scratch pad before you put your pen on paper. Okay. So I'd say 7-8 minutes of writing, maybe 1 or 2 minutes for reviewing, revision. So typically around 10 to 12 minutes for thinking. So Roma has asked a good question. I just got sidetracked answering about section 2. Here is that penalty. So you can leave 8 questions unattempted without any penalty. But after that, every question that you do not attempt, they deduct zero point 0.1 from your tally. So how does that make you feel? Oh, Vishal, yes, 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 absolutely yes. I remember that in 2001. Remember that in probably, I guess, around, was it 2011, 2013? I think there are these couple of years which were really difficult. And in fact, when it comes to quant, I would say they were probably a shade tougher than the kind of quant that you got this year. Saransh, last year they took very few days. Yeah, last year they ended up taking only 3 4 days, but this year they definitely release it before 8th of December. You should expect it any day. In fact, practically every morning I wake up. This is the first thing that I check. Release hua kya? So we should expect it to be released rather soon. So let's see. देखेंगे जब आएगी तब आएगी यार, क्या फर्क पड़ता है। अब अपन ना काम तो हमने कर दिया, हमें पेपर देना था, हमने पेपर दे दिया, अब देखा जाए। Okay, so that's new about that. And now diving specifically into verbal ability and verbal and logical ability section of the ZAT, which is another name of English and verbal reasoning. This is what we got. So no sectional time limit, 26 questions, and here is the breakup for ZAT 22. That is last to last year. So you see that? And if I look at 23, it was more or less the same, where the only difference is this. So you notice we also had a para completion question apart from para jumbles, and there were 5 critical reasoning questions. So overall, the difference is you have one new element is poem comprehension, another new element is grammar, another new element is this one fill in the blank question, which is vocabulary plus comprehension driven. So they give you a sentence with 4 blanks. The difficulty level is usually high. And should I say critical reasoning is a new area? We can, but then not really. So the idea is even in the CAT exam, at least 1/3 of your questions in RC are reasoning based questions. So the concepts are the ones that you pick up from critical reasoning. The only difference is instead of a paragraph, you had a passage to deal with. But in ZAT, we get direct paragraph based critical reasoning questions where the question would typically give you a paragraph. After the paragraph, you'll have a question stem, and after that question stem, you'll have options. So we are working on critical reasoning so that we can start getting 5 of these questions right. Ankit, there can be, absolutely, yes, there can be. Although normally poems do not have reasoning based questions, but the RC passages can have reasoning based questions. Vishal, traditionally, the English section of ZAT historically, traditionally has been tougher than the English section of the CAT. So when we design mocks, we at least try to mimic some or the other previous year pattern. Okay, so in that CR, your typical paragraph based CR where there are 5 question types that you mostly get. So you need to work on identifying the assumption, identifying the inference, strengthening, weakening, and there is this 5th part that I forgot to write while I was making this, so I'll write it now. Identify the logical flaw, which I typically end up considering an extension and or a corollary of identifying the assumption based questions. So these are the 5 question types that I definitely want you to master. Apart from these, they have also occasionally gotten into uh, parallel structure or similar structure argument questions. Okay, so that's another area that you want to be well versed with. Arnav, very easy to answer. 100%? टारगेट थोड़ी ना कम करते हैं, टारगेट तो 100% एक्यूरेसी का ही होता है. When it comes to preparation, we go ahead and give it our best so that we end up getting every question right. And in fact, every question that you attempt in the exam, you attempt it only because you feel that you've gotten it right. But just like the cat, uh, 80% plus accuracy is usually amazing. Sonali, they don't even divide them into sections. So there is no sectional cutoff there. There is no sectional time limit per se. Hmm. What else? Okay, but generally, in each one of those subsections, although there is no sectional time limit, generally in each one of those subsections, you want to be 90 percentile plus to be on the safer side for XLR. Sectional cutoffs are anyway college driven. So for VARC, this is what you typically target. Okay. Although for decision making, these cutoffs are lower. So roughly around 76 percentile there. And for QA as well, I think we are looking at 75 percentile. So in VARC, verbal ability and verbal and logical ability, as these AT guys say, I think this nomenclature is crazy. Verbal ability and logical reasoning, if you're in the top 10%, that generally be good. For DM, for QA, this. And the overall percentile that you typically need, a lot of it would also depend on the gender, but I'd say around 96, 97 percentile if you are a male, and around 3 percentiles less if you are a female, if you're a woman. Navneet, obviously keyboard, yeah, obviously, yeah. Just type it all in now. It's an online exam completely now. Until a few years ago, it used to be. In fact, surprisingly, XAT used to be the very first exam that tried to go online. But in the very first year, they received so many glitches that they abandoned it and moved back to paper pencil based tests. And then later on, when the technology and the facilities were sufficiently advanced, they moved back. Arnav, I am basically looking at this because I do not need to just take you to the interview room. I would also want to ensure that you also get selected. So the higher your percentiles here are, so there are times when you are a very borderline case, and then that may lead you to a call, but then that you need to make up for that in the subsequent round, which can be a little challenging. Although you are absolutely right for the PM program, absolutely at around 95 percentile, people did get a call. For the HRM course, in fact, they were even lower last year. People got a call at around 93 percentile as well. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. But I am jacking it up by a couple of percentiles. And for HRM, just shave off another 2-3 percentiles from it. So that you don't have to face much of an issue subsequently when it comes to getting selected. So now tell me, when it comes to critical reasoning, I have jotted down quite a few things here. Is there any issue? Is there any problem? Is there any challenge? Is there anything that you need more clarity on before we move ahead? Is there anything that worries you or bothers you conceptually? So my typical suggestion at this juncture would be that if you have ignored CR so far, please make sure that you revise your sessions of critical reasoning in case you were working with me or elsewhere. Otherwise, you would now like to become conceptually sound and thereafter practice questions and see if one of these question types poses a bigger problem for you. शिवांगी, I could not understand that. ज़्यादा पढ़ाई करी हूँ उतना ही बुरी हूँ क्या करूँ? Shivangi, it is not about the number of hours that you put in. It is actually about learning from those hours. So when you say utna hi buri hu, what you're basically saying is that your accuracy rates are low. Now, if your accuracy rates are not where you want it to be, it simply means that you are missing out on some ability or technique, right? So you just need to get that ability, that technique. Now imagine if I want to become better at critical reasoning, and I start going to the gym for 3 hours every day. I'm putting in a lot of effort. 3 hours of gym is like crazy. By the time I walk out, I'd probably be half dead. Will that help me improve my CR? Although I'd be putting in a lot of effort. So this is just an extreme example to tell you that the effort needs to be put in the right, put towards the right direction. It needs to be customized on the basis of our own unique set of shortcomings, challenges. If we do that, we should be fine. Extreme gaming, which section would be the hardest? I don't know. How would I know? यार पेपर मैंने थोड़ा ना बनाया भाई. But what I can guarantee is that if you work with me, all the sections become easy. You go through them and you're like, हाँ आसान है ऐसे ही तो होता है. Used to get 30 to 45 in Gokul, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely need to work on three of the areas. So adjust for poem comprehension and work on a bit of grammar. And if you can take care of these two things, then yes, the kind of scores that you've been getting in the CAT V8 tell me that you're definitely an excellent candidate. You should be able to sail through it. Oh, the third thing, sorry, I said three things. Do revise figures of speech as well. So if you can add these three things, you should generally be good to go. Shivangi, these are aptitude exams. These are not even knowledge-based exams. So forgetting would not really be very applicable to these, no? Ayan, absolutely, you can do that. So you can definitely use GMAT or LSAT material if you have, if that is available to you, if you have access to that. Okay, so to coming to the approach now. So what do I do? Whenever I approach a critical reasoning question, this is the first thing that I do. I read the question stem. Never start off by reading the paragraph. That is a sheer waste of time. So read the question stem and figure out what it is that is getting asked. Is it an assumption question? Is it an inference question? Strengthening question? Weakening question? Logical flaw question? What? So once you've read the question stem, it is only then that you know how to process the information of the paragraph. So please start here always. After that, go to the paragraph. And if the paragraph is very challenging, convoluted, long, you can choose to paraphrase it as well. Paraphrasing basically means to convert it into your own language. Then, number three, now that these two things are done, you will roll out the question specific strategy. So for each one of these questions, we have a different way of going through that paragraph. So you will adapt that way. And while practicing, I will shed a little more light on that. And then finally, you go to the options and start eliminating. So our core strategy does not change. We still work with elimination. So the most important part is this, and then learn the question specific strategies. Okay, so on the next slide you will have a question, but you won't have the answer choices. The answer choices are available on the slide thereafter. Okay, so once you've read it, let me know and I'll take you over to the options. So here is your question number one. So this part that comes after the paragraph, this is the part that is known as our question stem. Okay, so start from here. So what does the question stem ask? Which of the following hypotheses does the claim depend on? So whenever we are asked for what the claim depends on, can I say that it is essentially going to be an assumption question? So what do we do in assumption questions? When we go to the paragraph, we identify the argument. Okay? Or we basically analyze the argument. So analyzing the argument essentially means at the end of this reading, you should know what the conclusion is and you should know what the premises are that are, of course, provided in the paragraph. So go ahead, read it. You have 30 seconds and then I'll take you to the answer choices. Okay, so you've read it. Any issues here? Right, so here are the answer choices. What's your take? So answers, guys, answers. Okay, so I've gotten a lot of B's and one C. Let us check. So first up, let us move back and then see what the argument is. So the conclusion here is that this year's sales levels and profits for Mother Dairy will be smaller relative to last year's. Fair enough? So what is the conclusion here? The sales and profits are going to be smaller than last year. Why? Four of their delivery centers in Hamirpur colony have closed down over the past 6 months. Fair enough? So if I were to paraphrase it, four centers closed down in Hamirpur colony in the last 6 months. Therefore, the sales and the profits should go down. Yes, Arjun, absolutely yes. So let us check B. Running costs of Mother Dairy did not see a reduction from last year to this year. Now, we are looking for an assumption. So what is an assumption? An assumption is an unstated premise. An assumption is an unstated premise, right? So it is supposed to support the conclusion. So first up, the first pass is, let's check, does B support the conclusion? Running costs of Mother Dairy did not see a reduction from last year to this year. Okay, so sales and profits will decline or not, and then, so that is one way. Then look at another option that I got was C. This year, processing centers that have been open have delivered fewer amounts of milk than they did last year. See, look at this. They're talking about processing centers that are open this year have delivered fewer amounts of milk than they did last year. Achha, no, sorry. This year, processing centers that have been open have delivered fewer amounts of milk than they did last year. So on the face of it, both of them seem to support. So what do? We run a negation test. Okay, we run a negation test. So running costs of mother dairy saw a reduction from last year to this year. Now, if I negate it, does it impact my argument? Can I not make the argument? So when I negate B, I realize I can still make this argument. So it is not an assumption. So an assumption is a new piece of information which is critical for arriving at that conclusion. Without it, you cannot even arrive at it. So let's check C. This year, processing centers that have been open have delivered larger amounts of milk than they did last year. So can I arrive at the conclusion now? I can. Why? Because look at what C says. This year, processing centers that have been open. Yeah, do I know anything about the number of processing centers that were supplying milk to all the outlets? Do we know that? We don't. So what if until a couple of years ago there were 20 processing centers and now that were open and now there are only 5 processing centers that are open? So whether those 5 supply fewer amounts or larger amounts will have no bearing on uh, the sales levels or the profit levels. You wouldn't know. So B and C both won't work. Now, when I look at this, one of the assumptions that I see is that we are talking about only Hamirpur colony and we are saying that the profits will be smaller. So one of the assumptions is that Mother Dairy does not sell outside Hamirpur colony. Because if it does sell outside Hamirpur colony and they are expanding there outside Hamirpur colony, then this conclusion won't hold. So we need to assume that Mother Dairy is restricted to Hamirpur colony. It's obviously one of those very obvious assumptions. Yet another assumption is that the sales at the other outlets that are open has not increased. Yet another assumption is that the 4 outlets that closed down were profit making centers. What if they were already loss making centers? See, there's plenty of assumption that I could see. Now, when I look at D, it says Mother Dairy is not one of the firms outside Hamirpur colony that receives much of their business from customers. So this is another way of saying that Mother Dairy does not have business outside Hamirpur colony. It does not have business outside Hamirpur colony. And this is definitely needed because the moment you say it has business outside Hamirpur colony as well, then you cannot definitively say that their sales levels and their profit levels are going to decline. So this should be the answer for question number 1. Okay. And that is why we should go ahead and pick up D. Here is the next one. Let's solve this too. So this time around, the question stem directly asks us for the assumption. So let's read it. And let's add a layer. Can you go through this argument and tell me what the assumption is? We'll go through the answer choices later, but can you look at this itself and tell me what the assumption should be? Okay. So I think identifying the assumption in this case should be relatively easy, no? So the conclusion is this part, and it is arrived at on the basis of this. So the assumption is that the thank you notes sent were the reason behind higher uh, placement offers. The assumption is that the thank you note that you sent after a job interview influences your chances positively for getting selected, right? So now that we have this, so normally when I attempt, I think there are just two exceptions: when I attempt inference based questions or when I attempt resolve the paradox questions. These are the two questions where I don't think of a likely answer choice. I just go to the options. But for the rest of the questions, I do try to at least carry some idea of the assumption, etc. with me. So let's have a look. Here are the options. Which one would you choose? Okay, so two answers so far. Right. So what were the assumptions? One of the assumptions that I shared with you was already there. But let's check. How about A? Let's work with elimination. A says the 40% improvement in the probability of job opportunities was common with all fields in which students applied for jobs. So whether it was common in all the fields or not, is that even relevant? See, even if it was not common, even if some areas, some fields uh, witnessed a bigger advantage, even then you should make it a policy to send thank you notes. So, even when you negate it, it does not impact the conclusion, and therefore A can be ruled out. Okay, then people have picked up C. C says after interviews they felt were successful, student job applicants were no more likely to send handwritten thank you notes than after those they felt were not. Okay, so to simplify C, what they are saying is that the students, those who sent thank you notes irrespective of what they felt their chances were. Now imagine if a particular interview went well, I felt it went well, and then I sent a thank you note. On the other hand, when it did not go well, I did not send a thank you note. So in this case, uh, Can we say that it was a thank you note that increased the probability of getting selected? No, thank you notes were sent when you felt that your chances of converting it are high. So yeah, it's definitely one of the assumptions that students sent a thank you note after an interview irrespective of their chances. The moment you negate it, now making thank you notes mandatory will not make any sense. It is not going to increase the probability. So does not it the negation test definitely supports C over A. Then we have D. Employers are not more likely to discard a piece of handwritten mail than to delete or disregard a piece of unsolicited mail. Okay, so but then don't you need to realize, don't you need this? How often do they disregard a piece of unsolicited mail? We are now relying on GK. We need to have this information. Without this information, so in a way, you would have to assume something in order to make D the answer. Since C already is an answer choice where we don't have to assume anything, it automatically scores over D at this juncture itself. Okay, so therefore, the best answer here should be option C. And let's go through one more question. Let's try it on this one and then we'll move on. So once again, here is the conclusion, and the rest of that essentially acts as a basis. Here are your answer choices. Let us see what you mark. Okay, so D, loads and loads of D. Okay, the technology used for the conversion to wind and solar power. Technology used for the conversion to wind and solar power is not more costly than the technology used to produce electricity by combustion. Let us see if this argument needs it. Uh, Even if it is costlier, but once initial capital investment is done, you can have low cost, reliable energy supplies. So this can actually be a part of that initial high cost. The argument already factors it in. It in fact tells you it is more costly. And when you say it is not more costly, you are actually negating a premise which will end up weakening the argument. So D should not be the answer. E can be ruled out here. We need green tech for a better tomorrow is irrelevant for the argument here. So Arjun, that is one of those easier answer choices to rule out. But look at C, the cycles of weather are coherent and predictable. So when they say that they are getting reliable power supplies, they are assuming that okay, when it comes to solar power, when it comes to wind power, the weather is going to be predictable. That is how you'd arrive at reliability. So this is definitely needed because if they are incoherent, if they are unpredictable, then you cannot have reliable energy supplies. Then you won't be able to arrive at this. So that assumption is definitely needed to arrive at this. B, in the immediate future, no fresh gas, oil, and coal reserves can be found. I'm saying, okay, let's say in the immediate future, fresh, even if I negate it, the argument that is given in the paragraph still stands, which tells you that B is not critical for that argument. So you can eliminate it. Okay, I actually, no, Arjun, I picked up challenging questions because I thought that, okay, we've gone through CAT, um, but then you're right. I think when it comes to paragraph based CR, we haven't really worked on it that much yet. And thus, I should carry a ladder the next time around when we meet. Okay? Probably bring in some questions that illustrate it in a relatively easy manner, but that's okay. It's just one of the many sessions that we will go ahead and work on when it comes to that. So hopefully we'll be able to take care of it. So the best answer choice for this is option C. So let us stop here today. Today we focus a little more on the basics. The next session on XAT CR should happen in another few days. We've not focused much on basics. We just go ahead and work on questions, and through the discussion on the questions, hopefully, we'll be able to illustrate the points. Okay, so if you want more practice, you can consider enrolling in our test series, which also gives you more than 55 non-CAT mocks. See this? So plenty of practice for you right there. You can also consider joining our batches where we work on other management entrance tests if you're facing a fair bit of challenge when it comes to the concepts. Okay? And in case you have only few areas that bother you, why don't you unlock a 3-day free trial and then go through those areas in case you're not a BYJU'S exam prep student? All on the house. If you keep on doing that, I won't be surprised that you go on to get great percentiles just like some of these students from last year. And of course, once this year's results come out, I'll be able to give you a lot more names. So that's it from me today. I look forward to meeting you guys really soon once again. In fact, we'll be meeting tomorrow at 7 for our Snap journey. And then on another couple of days later, we move back and start talking more about Snap and XAT. So until we meet next, stay safe, stay focused, stay in touch. You know how to reach me. Until then, have a great time ahead and enjoy your weekend.